Hey there, I'm back. Hey, it's David R. Becker here with BeckerArt, and today we're going to be doing a underwater scene. I can't tell you how many people have asked me to do this kind of scene. So here it is, guys. This is my own shot too. My own. When I was up in Canada, this is one of the shots I took, and it's probably not the best looking shot of underwater, but hopefully it'll do fine. And so today's beer comes to us from Katrina. Katrina is one of the students that came to both my workshops. One in went up there in Plymouth, Plymouth Arts Center, which was the cheese capital, and then also up at Dillman's, or not Dillman's. Or was it Dillman's? Yeah, it was Dillman's. So thank you, Katrina. She's also a poet, by the way. She's an artist, a poet, and she's, I think, traveled walked about 500 miles on the Ice Age Trail in Wisconsin. So she got me this New Glarus Brewing Company. This is called Totally Naked. So we're going to try New Glarus, Totally Naked, employee-owned brewing company. And she gave me a case, so we're going to be drinking a lot of her beer for the next, I think, month and a half. Because not only did she give me this, every beer they make, I think, and she also given me a whole nother case of, it's somewhere in here. And we'll get to that beer later. But here, cheers, guys. Cheers. Well, Totally Naked is a very good beer. Very nice and cold, and I'm gonna give that a 10. That's really good. Very, very good. I've heard this was a very good New Glarus brewing company. Makes some really good beers. This is a really good one. So, but again, it's called Totally Naked. All right, so here we go. So here's what I've done. Actually, first we got to go and see who's here, right? Hey, Sue, Tina, Ann, Linda, Trina, Katrina. If you are here, please say hello. She's one of our people that's on there pretty often. And in my Facebook group, you can see her stuff. She's in the last 2 times she's taken my class, gotten really good, and actually as much as you guys have too. Hey, Linda. Hey, Sherry. All right, let's go and let me show you what my website is. So my website is davidrbecker.com or beckerart.net. That's where you find everything that I do. When I'm out here, when I'm away, I am back, and I will not be going anywhere until September. So we're going to be doing a lot of painting this time. And so our supplies are here, as always, Holbein watercolors. We have our masking fluid, which we didn't use. I'm not using any masking fluid today. My brushes, which you can get on my line. And, of course, Stonehenge Aqua paper by Legion is what the paper I use. I always use 300 pounds so it doesn't wrinkle. Let's go right to our value study and understand our value study. So, really important. If you read my newsletter this week, it was all about the value pattern. And I can't bring that to the front more than I really have to get this into your brains so that you guys understand this. And next week we're gonna have the same thing, because it's a Japanese design way of notan. I think that's how you pronounce it, notan. It's a design element in how to create a big value pattern. I like to make a big value pattern of black and white instead of having that middle tone. So what you have to do is decide where your middle tone is going before you get started, and make it a simple composition between your black and white, lights and darks, black and white. And so as you see here in this image, and this is so important that you guys start doing this. I mean, you guys are at that point. Even if you're a beginner, this is such a good thing to kind of realize, because it makes it easy on you. So here, when I make things black and white, so here's the colored version, I make it black and white. So if you look, this area down here and this area up here is kind of a middle tone, right? This area of dark right in here is basically a black, right? You're going to see that. That's a dark. That's part of a dark pattern. And when something is a middle tone, it can go either to the light part or to the dark part. And you want to make it that simple, the pattern. It's almost like the yin-yang thing, when it's that simple between black and white. So you make the middle tones either in the black or the white. And so I'm going to make this middle tone right here in the light. So the light is kind of coming through here and over on this side. And then you have the black coming right down the middle here, kind of on a little S kind of little S or Z or whatever you want to make it. So that's the pattern of light and dark. And I want to make anything in here has to be darker than, nothing in here can be as light as what's in the light area. And nothing in here can be as dark as in the dark area. That said, though, you can get a little bit of that in there, but most of it should be in the light area because that's the pattern of your values. And you make it this big. This down here is a middle tone, right? That's a middle tone. If you look on here, that's a middle tone. But I'm going to put it in the white. I'm going to put it into the light. So yes, I will have some darks in here to create the shapes of the rocks, but I'm not going to try to make this as dark as the dark area and try to keep my darks a little bit lighter in that area. I hope that I understand that because we're going to go over it again next week. And I'm going to explain it again with Notan, Japanese way of design, because I see so many people trying to do paintings. I've been looking at watching people what they paint and trying to show them how they can take their images and then make them paintable. And so I can do that with the live class. A little bit harder to do it with the class that's online because I can't do everybody's individually, but we're going to get through this. And so cheers, guys. We're going to be doing a lot of painting. Cheers, cheers, cheers. What we got here again? Totally Naked Brew by... This is very good. I give it a 10. This is a very good beer. All right, so here's what I did this afternoon. I had my class, my live class, and there was a few things that I didn't do quite as well as I would have liked to. And that is that I didn't get dark enough in my darks and my light. My pattern, it's okay, but if you want to get something dramatic and get drama in your paintings, then I want to make this area here a little bit darker. You know, I want to make that a little bit darker. And I did use opaques in this because I didn't want to use masking fluid. And I'm really not against masking fluid, but you can do that. But to me, I just figure put opaque color into it. You know, I think that's just as easy. And you can tell I kind of made this my center of interest, my area of interest. And so that being said, if this is my center of interest, then this should have had the most darks. And I got a little bit more dark and lights right in here. So I guess it could be that whole area, which is fine. But I just need to make this area a little bit more light and dark so that it's a little bit more of that drama in it. All right, let's get going before I get you all confused. Here we go. So, and ask the questions, and welcome everybody. Marion, Sue, Sherry, Marianne, and Maria. Maria was just in England, I saw. Wow, and you should see her stuff. Check out her stuff on Instagram and Facebook, or Instagram. Really beautiful, beautiful sketches that she's been doing. Let's put this beer out of the way so you don't get a shadow on my thing. And so here we go. So we start with what? Step one, always, you've all learned this now. Step one is always your number one thing to do is your lights. And so that determines your colors. So I'm going to go in here with my colors and now start wet the area where my light colors are going to be. And so I'm just going to basically wet the whole thing. I always find that wetting the whole thing is easier. I don't need any hard edges in here at the moment, so I'm going to take a little bit of, this is Verditer Blue, which is more of a purple blue. Actually, that's not in there, is it? I think it's over here. This is Compose Blue. That's what I was looking for. So I'm just going to bring that down here. And this is not a sky. This is just the lake going back here. And so I'm going to put a little blue in there, even though in my picture it's white. I don't want to do that because it's going to start looking like sky. And it's not sky. This is all water. We're looking down on the water. So make that a little bit more blue. Make it a little bit darker. I'm going to bring some waves in here right away. I'm going to put a little bit more waves than I see in the picture. Just that gives you more of an idea that this is water. When it's this still, it's harder to tell that it's water when you're looking into the water. So I'm going to take a little bit of this blue and give it a few waves in and over the dark. And this area right here is light, so that's going to be some white and light blue. Again, we're giving the impression, and look at that, I put some yellow, there was some yellow in my brush, so let's just wipe this out for a second. There's yellow in my blue there. Let's probably try to make some green at the time. If you have questions, please ask. Oh, I see there's questions. Glad to be watching you. Are you using the Notion value type of design? Yes, yes. That's what I'm going to be talking about in my next newsletter next week, about the Noten design. I think it's called Noten. I'm not sure if that's the pronunciation. Notan. But yes, I'm very much into that kind of design, which I really didn't even understand that I am that way until you guys mentioned it. Yep, Maria, exactly what you said. What I learned about Noten is the importance of harmony, balance between white and black, and that's exactly what I'm talking about in this last week's newsletter, because I don't want you to think of the middle tones as being part of the design. They have to be put into the middle tones have to be put into the black or white, and so that's what's happening here. There's a lot of middle tone, but I need to make the design simplified so that I can do these big washes like this and then know that that's going to be a light or a dark. And if it's a middle tone, it can still lie into the light area, but it can be a light. And it just makes sure that I can put middle tone in there, but it's not as dark as in the dark area. So yes, you can have middle tones, but you have to assign them to either the black or the white. It just helps out the thing so much. I'm using, the first time I'm using, I have a little leaf green here, because this afternoon I couldn't mix it. I just had a hard time mixing a really bright green. And so I thought, why not just use the color out of the tube almost? Because that's the only kind of green I actually kind of like is limey, leaf green. Leaf green is a pretty nice green. And it's because my yellow was not bright, and I just couldn't get a bright green out of there. Take a little lavender. Hey Maura, hey Sherry, hey Michelle. Michelin, is that how you pronounce it? Welcome. And so I'm putting my lights in. Again, lights are exactly what they state. And see, that makes it easy also when you go to do like my 3-step process. If you do this Noten right, and if you do the design where you're putting the middle tones into light or dark, then it makes it so much easier to paint because you know exactly what you have to paint first. Either your light or your dark, and there's no questions there. You just do the lights first. You always do lights first in watercolor. It's the easiest way of doing it. Yes, there are people who don't do it that way, but I think the most easiest way of doing it is doing light to dark. And so now I'm going to get my little, and I think also look for, like, is it going to be blue orange, green red? What are you looking for in the color scheme? Is it going to be yellow purple? Those are complements, and so sometimes I kind of go with that. What core blue? The blue was more composed blue. It was composed blue with a little bit of horizon blue. I made some waves. Now I'm going to go into this whole light part down here, and I'm going to make it a little bit more. Should I go with green and green and blue? Because I think the yellow looks a little bit too like it isn't underwater. I think if I go more with the green, the greenish, like what do you call it? Like the rocks are covered with algae. Make it more maybe that kind of color this or greenish yellow with a little bit of orange. See, I think this afternoon I got a little bit too brown with everything. I mean, it's okay, and it's brown, but I think I want to go a little bit different with so I went more with the blue orange, and so I'm not sure if I want to go with blue orange this time. Well, I guess I have to because I do have a big blue mark there, so I go a little bit blue and make my lights down here. Go right into my light of these rocks. These rocks are considered a light, right? So I'm gonna make them different though from this underwater stuff because they are not underwater. This over here, these are underwater, so that has to be a different color than the rocks in there. And so the rocks over here are more gray, so I will go with a gray, with a little bit more of a gray in here, and just kind of put them in there, spatter a little bit, get it. They can be light. They're part of my lights scene. the light scheme of things, and make them a little bit, I don't know, let's see, put a little violet in them. I'm not gonna put the darks in yet. This is the lights, and so you have to stay away. You can put certain lights in there. I mean darks. If you really want to put them in right away, you get a soft edge. But you can also do that later. I'm just trying to establish my colors. Maybe a little pink in there, and the purple. I'm using a little bit of everything. That could be a problem though. See, you really should try to limit your colors a little bit so that they work together well. If you don't do that, and I know I'm saying but not doing it. Sometimes it's hard because you're looking at the picture, you just copy the picture's colors, right? That happens. That's like when you're in my class, I never give you the color of the picture because then you are just copying the picture. I like you to make up colors because then you're thinking about things like color scheme and what colors you want to use for an area. So I'm going to go with, well, you've got this big blue right here, so I have to go with orange. It's most of the things, so I have to go with some type of brownish orange color. It complements. It complements with that. And then that becomes blue and orange, or a little bit of yellow and green. I mean, yellow is kind of like a green, so that's going to be purple. So we got the purple green. Here, I'll wet all this down. This is supposed to be a light area, and this is going to be really dark over here, dark part of that. So it doesn't matter what I put over here right now because it's going to be darker anyways. I just have to see, I'm putting a bunch of pigment in there, getting it all nice and that dark that's going to be in there, that's going to be right on top of the light, so I don't have to worry about that. This dark over there too, I'm just again putting in my light. And I know it sounds like I'm a broken record, that I constantly say the same thing, but that's how I like to teach. That's how my teachers taught me, is to sit there and constantly say it over and over again until you do it where you're not thinking about it. You automatically go from light to dark. It's just, that's the easiest way, the best way of doing it. And since we got some green, let's put some green down here because that way it'll look at least like it's a little bit of a green there, a little green here. It'll all be good. It'll look like a little bit of seaweed on the bottom here. You know, also put a little orange in there with the green. It's all gonna look good. And I let things float. And make sure when you're doing this painting that you put down your marker or your pencil lines really pretty thick, because when you're doing this, you're going to lose a lot of your lines. And so that's what happened this afternoon. I lost all my pencil lines because they were really, really light. And so I put that big wash like I'm doing now, and they all went away. So I just had to make up those rocks, and so that's not a good thing. So definitely go a little bit harder on the pencil. Use a softer pencil and make it really nice and dark so that you don't lose your pencil lines. All right, so there's pretty much my water, my lights. So that's step one. Step one, finished. I can always go darker. I can even make things lighter if I want to go back in and like pull out colors. Let's say I want to pull out colors. I'll take a smaller brush and pull out. While it's wet, you can pull out the colors like of the rocks, make them lighter if you feel like you got too dark with something. But it probably shouldn't, it's fine. You can also do this when it's dry. I did that as my other one because I got a little bit too dark down here, but you can just pull them out like this. Just pull out a little bit of the pigment. Get back to the white of the paper. All right, let's go to our darks. And so now let's go to our large, step number 2, large mediums, large darks. This all goes together with the notan and the design of your light and dark, black and white. This is how I just started realizing that it all is connected. So if you do it this way, it makes your painting so much easier. So when I'm gonna probably do a whole assignment for you guys. I'm taking and letting me see your pictures, and then we're gonna make them all black and white. And I may have to ask you to send me emails of your thing, and I may do a whole thing on taking each one of your pictures and critiquing it and how I would paint it. So that's what's probably coming up in the near future. Because I've just been seeing everybody picking such hard subject matter, and so much that they would have to change everything. you know, to make it a feasible painting to paint in watercolor and make it look dramatic and make it look good. I mean, I'm not painting something if I can't make it look good. I know right away. That's like us watercolors. We pre-plan. We do sketches before we get down there. We know if it's going to be good or not. I know before I even start. Well, not every time, but pretty close. I know if a painting is going to be good or bad when it comes to lights and darks, because we are watercolors, and that's what we do. We do our value study first, and we sketch. We do a sketch before we paint it. And then there's urban sketchers who do that as like that's their thing. They basically are doing an urban sketch, and that's kind of like a sketch for almost like you can do a bigger painting from that. And it's just the painting itself, kind of, and it's also a good thing to do. Just being able to do the urban sketching. Oops, whoa, that's a really purple. Hey Barbara, hey Darcy, Sherry. So that's back there is kind of a greenish color too, and so I'm gonna make it a darker green, more gray though. I don't wanna, and it's wet all back here, so I'm not gonna be getting a hard edge. But you know me, if you want to get a hard edge, you can get it a harder edge. It's still gonna be soft, but you can make it harder by just adding more pigment and not so much water. Just go in here and I'm gonna make this a little bit darker on the edge here. And this is okay to be a soft edge anyways. I'd rather have this a soft edge, so might as well go in there with a lot of pigment while it's still wet. And this is almost damp, and so I may even get watermarks, but wouldn't that be a kind of a good thing over here? Because now we're getting a kind of a look of the wash, and it's gonna give me kind of like a blossom effect, which is kind of one way of getting to make it look like leaves. This got kind of a surface that looks fine for doing the leaf kind of look. Put a little bit of violet in that. Just make this a little bit darker. And it was something I didn't do before was make this dark enough. And so this is my middle tone. This is kind of my middle tones and darks. These are my large middle tone and darks. And so they're not my detailed darks yet. They are just my middle tone, my middle tones. So that's going to go right into the water. And see how nice soft edge that is? That's pretty cool. I like that. It's fine. I like soft edges more than hard edges because they look blurry. And we don't do enough blurriness into our work. And so I'm trying to get my students to do that, learn that. Now, I don't want to get my dark in here yet because that's dark details. That's a little bit more of a detail thing. So let's go down here. This is all really wet, boy. I'm just going to try to keep on going. So, this is my lights. Let's just get like a middle tone in there for those plants. And again, if there's something you want to ask me, please ask away. That's why I'm here. It's ask now while I'm painting it, so then you can see maybe I can show you something by you asking. I do these every Thursday night, so for you guys, not, you know, and also for myself because I really learn a lot when I'm teaching. And so ask away. Hey Lynn, yep, it'll be here. It'll be here forever. Sue asks a question, are there certain shapes that make a nice value pattern? Well, there's all kinds of different value patterns. There's the crucifix, there's the Z and S kind of composition type of thing. There are shapes, but it's all depends on what you're painting. So it's not like there's one better than the other. It just depends on what you're painting. But great question. Thanks. So now I'm going in here, middle tones, and on these rocks, you leave the top of them light, and the sides and bottoms of them are your darks. And then there's detailed darks that go even farther in. And so I'm just gonna kind of go in there and go around and make the sides a little bit darker. And I'll wait for the really dark darks, detailed darks, till my step 3. That's step 3. Bob Burridge has he made this list of all these great compositions, and like the crucifix or the he has them all different, laid out in different shapes for composition to get neat design. There's so many different kind of designs you can do. There's formal and informal. And one day I'm going to do that. I'm going to make a list of all of them myself. If you have my book on composition, they're in there too. You can get that book. It's on Amazon. It's out of print, but you can still get it. But just wait until I go over that. One day I will go over and I have to do that. I'm also gonna. Somebody had asked me to put together a list on a web page of all the products that have been kind of promoting to you guys, and I should have done that a long time ago. And it's like all the stuff that I tell you every week about Amazon. And so I will be putting together a page this next week about every one of those products, so that you don't have to go looking for them. You just go there and you'll find them, and with the links you can go right to Amazon. So this is my large mediums. That was my large mediums. And actually that's still part of my medium, but this is the light area. So I will be getting darker in there, but this is pretty much a light area. But now let's go in here and start getting some of our darks in there. I guess this is kind of, I try to make everything more mechanical so that you know step by step how to paint the painting. It's like, you learn that, but then in time, what you're going to do is you're going to break away from that, where it just becomes like a routine. And then when you have a routine of how to do it correctly, then it's when you start breaking the rules. You start going in and starting to look for things that you can break the rules with, because the best paintings are the ones that are breaking the rules and they're different. You know, you're doing something different that you normally wouldn't do, but it works because of, that's what makes your painting different. And I just read an article from Eric Rhodes, I think it was one of his newsletters, about that, where you kind of want to, don't do boring, being more dramatic. You have to go beyond the fundamentals of what you learned, and then kind of break some rules and make the painting look different because you broke a couple rules, but you still made it work. As a student, you may want to first learn the basic fundamentals, and then you can go and break the rules once you get to where these things just become routine in how you paint. And I even know how to design, because sometimes the design, I just try to break things down to, like, again, black and white, and make them very simple. I don't want to overcomplicate things, because that's when it gets to be overcomplicated. They don't look good. They just don't ever really work really well if you overcomplicate your designs. And there's so much happening. Simplify your center of interest. Make that the best, most important part of your painting, and just simplify, simplify, simplify. And that's more advanced when it comes to like worrying about your composition and stuff. First, you got to learn how to use the medium, learn that really well, and then later on, you're going to get to a point where you do need to know that. And that is what I'm trying to get to you this week. Because a lot of you are there. A lot of you are ready for that. And if you're not, don't worry about it. You may not understand it at the moment, but you will. In time, you will go, oh, that's what he's talking about. Now I understand. That happened to me a lot when I was in school, where you listen to your teacher and you're thinking, well, yeah, I think I know what I'm talking about. But then down the road, you're thinking, oh, now I really understand what he's talking about. So now we're going to go in here and get my middle tones and my dark reflections. And these are reflections from something up above here. So that you don't even see. There may be leaves way up there. So we're just going to go down here. And I made this hard edge because I was waiting for it to dry. Because they're hard edges, and they're going to be like the waves are affecting these reflections. Waves affect the reflections. I don't have many waves in the photo, so I'm putting more waves in so that there's more of a wave, and that will then give me all these little Z lines. It's not in there, but I'm making them up because otherwise it looks too much like, it doesn't look like it's in water. It just looks like you're drawing an object. And we're not doing a photograph. If I was doing a hyperrealism, then yes, I could do it exactly like it is, and it would look just like that. But we're not doing hyperrealism, so you have to get beyond that, and you have to go and make it some other way of making it look like what it is that's happening in the picture. So now I'm going in here, making this nice and dark. I have to make this a lot darker than I had made it the first time. So I'm going to go in here, just put some of the darks in there. And look at all the color I find. And I don't leave this area until it's what I want it to be. I want it to be done, and I don't want to go back in there again, because that's how you get the granulation, get that all happening now, so you don't have to go back in there later. So make it 20% darker than it is, because it's going to dry 20% lighter. So make it 20% darker. And I will put in more of the darks also when I put the rocks in there. So that'll be coming up too when I put my details. So this is not, this yes is a detailed edge, but it's still my wet in the wet big areas. I'm not at the stage yet where I'm doing detail yet. Even though, yes, I am doing details of that shape, that big shape. Large to small, always keep that in your mind. Large to small. Whoa, that's a little bit too red, huh? Oh well. Let's put a little blue in there. I want to make this one much darker, and it looks really dark, but I can guarantee you it's not dark enough. Even this area right here is not dark enough yet. We got to go back in because it's going to dry way too light. So we go back in here. Get a little bit more of the darks in there. That is the hardest thing I have ever had to teach, is to make things look wrong, to make them look right. You gotta make it look 20% darker. And so if it's wet and looks right, it's wrong. You gotta make it look darker. You gotta make it look wrong, so that when it dries, it looks right. Hey, Carol. Hey, Sue. So we're going to go in here now. And this is my dark area. This is my light area. So see how that light just shines on there? And so to get that look, I got to keep it nice and light over there and not do like I did this afternoon and make it too dark. But I also can change the color a little bit. But I don't want to change the color too much because I still want it to look like it's underwater. And the colors underwater are deadened a little bit. And it's very, like, not muddy, but it's covered with algae, and so it's more of the same color down there. And then I will manipulate those colors and lights and darks. I'll manipulate the values to get each one of these little rocks in there. See how I'm not really painting rocks right at the moment? I'm painting the whole area between the lights and the darks. And that's again why I always am suggesting that you do the big value pattern, because that makes it very easy for you to paint, because you know right away that that area is light or dark. And so this area, nothing in there can be as light as in the light area, and nothing in here in the light should be as dark as the dark area. It's not like I say it because it's just, you know, the way, it's just, that's the way you paint, that's the way I think. And that way it makes it easy for you to then to take your and do your large areas of light and dark. It all comes together with the 3 steps, you know, it all kind of falls together. All works. And it's just, I just started noticing that as a teacher, to teach it that way, just recently, and these last couple times I've been doing live classes, because I never really put it together in a way, in that way as a teaching method. You know, I would paint that way, but I wouldn't teach that way. And so I learned actually myself how to teach more and more each time I'm out there. And I just see what works and what doesn't, and what helps, I guess I should say, what helps more, what helps you guys more in learning how to do things in watercolor. And this is one of them. This is, I find that it works. It really does work if you work it that way. If you do your composition right, it makes it easier for you to paint your paintings. Hey, Dave. Yep, always better late than never. And even if you don't here today, anybody who is not here today, I don't think Katrina's here. That was her drink. But she'll probably watch it when she gets a chance. You guys all do, and then she'll probably paint it. Now, as a bunch of you are giving yourself these assignments to do, like so many of my paintings and stuff, and thank you for that, by the way. And I can see it helps you guys, and so that's really, really, really great that when I see that. I really love seeing that it's my things help you. I want you to get better, and if this is helping, wow, that's great. Just keep on following along. I hope help you in some way. So now I'm gonna negative paint some of these grasses, which I didn't do the first time. And so these are reflections I'm doing now. Reflections. They're still part of my large, medium, and darks. I'm not in my detail stage yet, even though yes, it is detailed that I'm doing the edges like they're little waves and stuff. Yes, that is, I am doing that, but it is not my super detailed darks. I can go in here also, and I can kind of try to get some darks in here that look like there are rocks in there, so I don't lose the edges, because I'm starting to lose some of the lines. And so I'm just going to put some of these in here so I can see, while it's wet, I can see some of the lines. And so I'm just going to go in there, do some of the edges of the rocks, and by using a lot of pigment I can make it stop on a dime, because I'm using a lot of pigment and thick pigment. Using thick pigment makes it stop. And then it also makes it an edge that's soft, and that's great underneath here. I will do the hard ones later, because that's important to make the hard ones. But you see how I'm kind of going around the rocks, and I'm doing them wet in the wet while it's wet. So I'm using a lot of paint so that it stops right there. Gives me a soft edge. Still gives me an idea of where the rock is here. And some of this I'd have lost, so I'm going to make up a few rocks here too. Just trying to make sure I get the big ones, the bigger rocks, that I want to make sure I get those. And I want to make it dark. This is my center of interest, this area right here, so that's got to look good. It's got to look really nice. So again, going in here, soft edges. And this lost all the rocks in there, all the lines. And so here I thought I had it dark enough, and even didn't have it anywhere closely. So now that dark right there, just put there. So I was saying you can put them dark in there, but I want to kind of make them more towards the color of what is the light part. So let's make that more like an orange dark, because then I'm sticking, this is my light area. So I know there's darks in there, but I want to kind of make the color then more towards what is in that light area. So then that indicates again that this is the light area. I'm trying to separate the lights from the dark because of the design. That's the design element, and you cannot go away from that. When you design something like that, you have to stick with that. You can't halfway through decide if you're doing a plein air, especially because when the sun kind of shifts on you, you have a thumbnail that you did, you got to stick with that thumbnail. You can't start chasing the sun or the lighting. You stick with what you started with, what you painted, what you put in as a thumbnail, and then keep on going with that. Because that's your pattern. Again, your pattern is everything. It's number 2 most important thing of your painting. And drawing being number 1. Drawing of things in your painting are very important to make them look like what they are. I mean, a scene like this is not that important for drawing wise, because a rock can be anything. Some of the plants can be anything. Rocks can be like anything. Water can be anything. So there, you're not so it doesn't matter as much to get the exact drawing of like this edge, or it doesn't matter so much. So let's go down here now and just do our little rocks. This is dried now, so I'm gonna get some hard edges. So I guess you could say that now I'm going to be going into my dark details, because that's my big area of mediums and darks, right? I got them all done pretty much, except for up here. This should be a little bit darker. That should be a little bit darker in there, underneath the rocks. And then our next step will be our dark details. Dark details indicate things then, and it starts looking like a painting when you start putting in your dark details. That's when you start making things look like the objects that they are. Before, it's just big areas of light and dark. Now I'm going to go in and start adding the rocks. I can't do this area yet because it's still wet. I mean, I could do like I did over here, use thick paint, and so I can make parts of it, so it'll be soft edge. It'll still be a line, but it'll be soft edge. So if you ever want to go into an area that you need that it's wet, but you want to have it a little softer, thick paint, thick amount of paint. No water in your brush. Tap it down in your towel, and get your big thick wash. Your line, and it's still going to float, but it's going to stop really quickly because it's not going to run very far because there's so much pigment in my brush it can't go very far. And that is really, if you can do that, you are so advanced. And I'm trying to train everybody in my classes to do that, in all my classes, and it's not that hard if you practice it. Practice working in a wet wash and just with a lot of paint, and you'll get some beautiful soft edges. Like I said, it's such a big thing that many artists don't have that ability to do that. Work in a wet wash and make it look soft edge and give it shape. And look at how I can just go in there and just have it stop. It's not going very far. And it gives me a soft edge, but you can still see the rocks. When I go in later with my hard edges, then I'll have a whole nother thing to show, like the hard edges. And that comes forward, right? Soft edges stay back. And hard edges come forward. So those will come forward, make things come forward. But this is just soft edges. Now I'm just kind of going in here, getting some of the darks. It's very good to be back also in my studio painting again. I'm doing all the on outdoor stuff, which not really, it was hard to get doing that with the outdoor painting. And doing and kind of teaching at the same time. It's just a little bit harder to do than a nice studio with your good cameras. And I constantly had hard time with using my phone. And actually I busted my phone up, so I'm actually looking for another phone again because I broke the lens on it. And so we'll see if the insurance will pay for that. I think you still have to buy a new phone though. Here we're gonna go, and also I'm gonna put some opaque blues and like this color. I'm not gonna use them now. I'm not gonna rub them out. I'm just gonna put them in with opaque colors, opaque paint. Look at this, isn't that fun? Just kind of going in there, and you're basically drawing around in the rocks, making the top part light, the side dark. This is all dry, so that's going to get hard edges, but this is all wet still, so I can go in there and get all these soft, beautiful edges in here. Soft edges, a lot of thick paint. Gotta hurry up here a little bit. Going too slow. I'm not used to being in front of the camera. Here we go. See, there we, and because you see through anywhere there's a reflection like this, you can't see through the light because that's reflecting the sky. But when there's a dark reflecting on top of the water, then you can see into the water. This is a light, so you can see a little bit. Sometimes you can actually see a rock in there too, and you can actually do that too. You can go in there, lightly put a little bit of a rock kind of going in here too. But then you kind of want it to be like very faint because that part is it's reflecting the sky basically, and so you just barely see what's through the water, but the dark areas you can see really easily what's below the water. I've been looking for, there's a couple artists I think I had in my newsletter recently about who did these kind of paintings so well. That one lady, oh my gosh, she does, I don't know where she finds all her reference, but man, she does a great job, and I forgot her name. But I had her in the newsletter not too long ago, and boy, did she do some great underwater things and stuff. And also how the water sits on top, and oh my gosh. Very realistic, very hyper-realistic, but very nice. I mean, if you can do them that detailed, then you can also do them not detailed, and then know what's the most important part about a wash to make it look important. Like, what part is important here to make it look underwater? I think it's mostly this light going on top and then switching to the dark that's underneath. And if you paint this kind of subject matter, paint a lot of it and photograph a lot of it and sketch a lot of it, because then you start realizing what it is that makes it look most impressive when it comes to making it look like it's underwater. because this is basically just underwater. In fact, that it's all darker, and then the only reason you see that is because there's a reflection from the reflection, but you can see in that area. Now let's start our darks on top while this is drying down here. Let's go up here and finish this. So I'm going to get in here with my details. So I'll take my small round brush now, and I'm going to go in and get in there and figure out where the darkest darks are. Negative paint some of these fern type of plants. Now this is the background, so I don't want to get too detailed in here. I just want to put a little bit in there to give it a little bit of show, but this has to be soft edged and blurred back. I don't need to give this much detail. Because it's back there, I do like to get a little bit into these ferns to look interesting. So I'll put a little bit of that in there. And then right away, right into the rocks. And you can see like the crevices inside the little parts underneath a little bit. I don't want to make too much contrast up there because I want to keep that in this area. Or what I'll do again is keep it in the color scheme that it is up there. Like, don't start shifting your color scheme. Stick with the same colors as you use it there, just make them darker. Make little rocks. See, the more contrast I have up here, then it comes too far forward. So keep the contrast not too crazily dark and contrasty. I mean, that's a little bit dark there, but it's enough to show that that's in the back, this is underneath. You really have to watch that, you know, what's in the background, what's in the foreground. Know what it is that you're wanting to accomplish in each area you're painting. That's in the background, this is the foreground, so that's got to be pushed back. So think to yourself, how do I make it go back? And that was my peacock dimensions, right? Remember peacock? If you don't, look it up on my on my YouTube channel. Look up PECOC, and you can find all about the 5 ways of dimension, how to get dimension in your work. How much time do I have? Okay, not too much. We'll be good. Let's put a little bit of blue in here because we got a little blue, so let's just get a little bit of blue in there. You gotta pick up colors that you use elsewhere. They have to be part of the scene. And I mean, if you copy the photo to a T, then yes, you can almost go exactly with what you see up there, but I always like to go a little bit more with my own idea of colors, and even these rocks, they're not looking exactly like those rocks exactly, but they have a top part is light, the side is dark. That's how I do my rocks. I do the tops always light, and if they're more rounded, like straight on, then you just have the edges darker. Now we have some greenery here, so let's make a little bit more green. Take some dark blue and green. And this could be some foliage, some little plants, a little dark in the crevices. And I can also spatter a little bit. That's a nice thing to do. So I'll just do that real quickly. I'm going to try to be really, really light. Like this, really close, and just kind of tap close. You can also go tap close. You don't have to tap it so crazy that you're, get it everywhere. So I just tapped a little bit here and there. And these are the outer rocks. These are the rocks that are above the water. And where the water hits the rocks, and it becomes the dark, you get a really dark there. I've kind of studied this when I'm out there looking at rocks and water and waves and everything, but right here where water hits rocks, it is really super dark. It's almost black. You can basically use black. Just make it really dark right there. Because it's always wet, it stays wet. And there's usually dirt and just really dark right there. And even in the picture you can see that because it's really wet and the little part is dry and it goes underneath here. Any questions, guys? You guys are very quiet today. Let me get some of these some of this grasses in here. I'm just going to negative paint a little bit more of that a little bit. Shoot up a little bit of this part. I can take a little bit of this green and put it in the water below to reflect it on the top surface. You know, there's the top surface of the water kind of reflects sometimes, and so you can do that. So it's a little bit of both. You get a reflection and you get a shadow. They are different. Shadows and reflections are different when it comes to water. The shadow is basically on top of the surface. The reflection is also on top, but it's the object itself reflecting underneath there. So now let's get a little bit harder edge down here in this area, because now I want this area in center of interest. So these rocks have to be a little bit harder edged. And so I'll wait for it to dry a little bit here, and so I'm just going to go in here. And then just give it a nice look. And how detailed you want to get is up to you. You can get photographic this way too. I mean, you can just keep on going, get more and more photographic, get more and more texture. It all is good, and you decide. It's very personal to how detailed you work. But you still, the composition is composition, so that doesn't change. That's where you still want the good design. You still want the good lights and dark pattern. Those things don't change. That stays. You establish it and it doesn't change. You got to stick with that. And I would rather you spend more time on that design of it than you would actually painting it, because you have to start learning how to create your own good designs of your photographs. So my next thing to start teaching you guys is, like, you're at the point where when you take a photograph, know what's good, know what's not so good, and what makes a good composition. And really, it's just so simple. If you just make it black and white and then look, does it look off balance? Does it look nice? If it looks nice while it's black and white, then you know, go ahead, do it. That's all. Keep it simple, a lot simpler than you're thinking. Now I'm going to use some blue over here. We're getting close here, aren't we? Yeah, about 7 more minutes. Let's get some blue. We are quiet because we are mesmerized. Oh, thanks. Question. So the rocks underwater don't have much highlight. No, we don't want to give them highlights as much as like things. And I'm going to highlight the surface more, and you're going to see I'm going to use white paint, so they wouldn't get highlight because they're all kind of like low key, and you want to keep them down there under the water. When you start making them too, actually being blurry like this really helped out a lot, because the blurriness of the water, kind of the water being on top, almost is like a sheet of glass is blurring it a little bit. And so actually it worked out better that I did do it while it was wet. I didn't do that this afternoon, and I think I should have, because that helps it actually a little bit. But the highlights, you're going to see, my last thing I'm going to do is highlights, and they're going to be pretty detailed highlights. And I mean, even maybe put some dots in there of sparkle. I love doing sparkle in water. As you know, if you've watched me ever, I love putting sparkle in water. Here I'm getting some of the rocks over here. Six minutes left, so getting pretty close. Also, I ask if you, I know many of you are new, and so if there's something that you feel that you don't know if I've done before, please let me know. I want to know what you want to learn how to paint. I love this. You know, I may not get to it I get to it in time sometimes, until a long time, or I won't get to it at all. But it's not, if you ask me, and I will try to see if I've done that already. I can tell you where they are, or I want to do it again. Or maybe there's something I haven't done painted yet. or if there's certain subject matter, or not even subject matter, but a certain technique that you want to learn about. I will be doing on different papers coming up on the board. I told you guys how to do it on the board, but I have to kind of make that first and show you guys what it is that some of the gesso ground that I'm going to be using. I'm also going to try some of this gesso ground on a gel medium surface, so that like I can do the rocks that are out here. I can actually put gel on them and actually make them look three-dimensional by putting that on and then using the gesso ground and still do a watercolor on it. It's pretty cool. I'll have to show you that. I wanted to show you something like that too. So now let's go our detail. Now it's our detail. Little rigger brush. So the highlights, I'm going to make a blue, a light blue. That's kind of like the blue that you see there already with the compost blue. Make it with white so it's thick. And then I'm going to do these little like little lines through here. Because it's just like it's little waves and reflections, and they just make it look more real. Like the water makes the water look a little bit more real. Whoops, that's all right. Because that's what it actually is. You'll see a little bit of this like reflection in the water from the above, and it's kind of distorted. It's not like a mirror image of what's there. It's a distorted image of what's above. And so by putting this light blue, and it's opaque, I'm using white and the composed blue, and I will put little waves into this area, and little light white lines there to indicate that that's wavy. It's wavy. You can also put little dots to show sparkle with white, but first I'm going to do the blue. And see, it looks like it's now on the surface, and go over the rock itself, and it'll look like this is the top of the surface of the rock, of the water. It's fun. I mean, watch water. It's just so neat to see what it does, some of the things that it does. And that's why doing this kind of subject matter is so cool too. I've always wanted to do this kind of subject matter where you're looking into the water. And I've always, in this area in Canada where I was at, Ottawa, near Ottawa, and this actually is Otter Lake. I constantly look for this exact kind of look. A couple more lines in here. Also, if you do reflections like this, dark reflections of the dark, I'll take some dark green. 2 more minutes. And then do the reflection of it into the light area of the little, it could be one here too, it could be little things, and then you just show the little reflections. They're coming out of the water. And now the final thing is pure white. Take pure white. Okay, clean my blue off of this. Hold on 1 second. Clean the blue off. Take a piece of paper towel. Take the blue off of there. See, all I do is take a little paper towel, rub over your white, and I got pure white here again. And then I'm going to sparkle the edges. It's like the sun, as the sun was right in here, I'm just going to put a little sparkle where the sun hits the edge of the dark and the light. It wouldn't be in the shadow here. You don't have sparkle in there because that's a reflection of that. But you get it out here in the light area. You get these little sparkles in the water. And I just like using pure white. I mean, if you are using masking fluid beforehand, you have to know what you want to do. You can do that too. Just going to put a little sparkle here. It just sparkles. It makes it look like the sun is right here, right behind this thing. We can even do some edging here. You can see through there a little bit. So you see through there a little bit. And 1 more minute. We'll be good, we'll be good, we'll be good. I'll go fast with this. So any last questions, please ask now. Or if you missed it and you want to ask me questions, always put them into the description of the video. I can always answer them later. And it's great to be back. It's great to be back. I'm so happy that you're learning. And a lot of times there are a lot of little dots. When it's shiny, it's sparkly, boy, it just sparkles all over. Especially in this area that gets right down the middle here. Put a few going this way and that way. All right. And now a little bit more texture in my rocks. This area could use a little bit of green, so hold on 1 second here. Let's make this a little bit darker. Get a little bit more texture in there. The ferns. Tap down on a little bit of color, a little bit of orange. Texture in there. You can blot it with your fingers. Alright, let's take the tape off and we're good to go. Again, if you have questions, please ask away. Oh boy, I just put my dirty finger in the sky or into the water up here. So let me just get rid of that dirtiness that I just put my finger into. There we go. So there you have a little bit of sparkle underwater rocks. What I wouldn't do is I would not take and kind of texture those rocks. Make them look again softer. If you did texture them, they may come too far forward again. I mean, in my photo, the photo right here looks more like they're not even in the water, where mine look a little bit more like they're underneath there. And so I would suggest trying and doing wet in a wet. That's always a good thing. And I did get a little bit nice and darker a little this time. So I'm happy with that. And so here's this afternoon's, which you can tell is not as contrasty. And so this one worked out just a little bit better when it came to color and a little bit of the underwaterness looking, right? All right. So until next time, guys, we will see you next Thursday. And on Sundays, sometimes, depending on if the weather's good, I may go outside to paint, and you can see me paint outside, or I'll be in my studio here again, and I usually just paint something that I feel like I need to paint at that moment. It's not a paint along, but you can watch along. So until Sunday or next Thursday, we'll see you then. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.